really excited for this record-breaking panel of 9 people up here, but it's my great pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's session. Dr. Jen Hastings, who goes by Jen, is a clinical professor at the UCSF Department of Family and Community Medicine. Dr. Hastings has been part of the medical community in Santa Cruz since 1998, initially with Planned Parenthood, developing the transgender health program both locally and nationally. Yes. Locally, Dr. Hastings supports the work of SafeRx and the Health Improvement Partnership and is engaged in many aspects of medical and behavioral health in Santa Cruz. Dr. Hastings has been involved with the Calciano Symposium in several different roles since 2009, including presenter, moderator, and CME consultant. Jen has also been on the advisory board since 2019 and will be our moderator for this afternoon. Thank you, Jen, so much.
Thank you. So, as you see, I have a great kind of mosaic here of your wonderful questions. And I'm going to do my best to direct the question at the person who's maybe the best person to answer, but all of you have different perspectives and vantage points. So I encourage you, even if I ask Leah, for example, that if Natalie or Gabriel or Rochelle or Andres or Ana Lilia or Steve or Vicky have a response that you want to add, please do so. We do have a lot of questions, and we have an hour. So I'm going to ask you to be pretty succinct in your responses. And Steve, I'm going to start with you, and there were like a stack of questions about psychosis. And that may not be the best place to start, but we're going to go for it. So let me just find. Okay. You've mentioned early signs and symptoms of psychosis and identifying those signs for early intervention. Are there any tools that you use to identify youth that are at higher risk for those symptoms before they develop? For example, family history, substance use, etc. I'm going to ask you also to weave into your answer something about marijuana use, because there's a question whether you see a correlation between marijuana use and psychosis. That's an issue that's up for our community as we see increased access in Santa Cruz with lounges happening. That's now been legal in the state of California to have lounges with marijuana use, so can comment on that. And then another question about marijuana use and an increase in early youth psychosis. So that was a lot of questions.
I'm going to try to be succinct. So, yes, there are ways of identifying young people who are at risk for psychosis, and in fact, within our Alcove centers, we actually have some screening questions, 2 screening questions about whether or not the young person might feel like their brain could be playing tricks on them or other areas of confusion, and then based on that, there was a general brief psychosis screen that was developed by our colleague Rachel Lowy at UCSF, which is really now used all over the country with 15 questions that sort of screen for potential psychosis risk. What's been used sort of nationally in this country is the SIPS, which is the screening interview for psychosis risk symptoms, that is a in-depth sort of interview that was really used initially for research that takes a couple of hours of a pretty skilled interviewer to work with a young person to look at that assessment, both for clinical high risk as well as for whether or not they've sort of moved to a point of having a very tightly held belief that one would consider sort of a more diagnostic for having developed a psychotic process. So those are the tools that people have been using sort of for screening at this point and for early detection. In terms of the cannabis-related question, I think it's really clear to people working in the early psychosis field that there Is everyone else hearing feedback or just me? Move it closer? Yeah, I wasn't sure. Okay.
They don't have to turn it up so high.
All right. So, in terms of the cannabis question, you know, it really is pretty clear that with the increasing legalization around cannabis use and the increasing potency of cannabis, that there is really seen often increasing rates of psychosis that people are seeing with legalization happening across states, with diversion to more adolescent populations. So I think the answer is yes. There does seem to be increasing risk with more open use of cannabis, you know, around the country and with states that have legalized it. And then, you know, there were studies done previously across Europe that really found that the higher potency really impacted one's psychosis risk over time. So with more chronicity and frequent use beginning at an earlier age, there does seem to be increased risk in terms of linkage to psychosis. You know, there's also been some studies looking at some genetic risk for psychosis related to cannabis use as well, and people have been looking at whether or not there could be a gene aspect for a subpopulation of people that might also just have that higher risk as well. So let me leave it at that.
Thank you. So there are several questions about how to engage parents in supporting mental health. There are also some questions, specifically a question for a school that has limited the use of a phone in the school classroom. Parents are asking for help on how to work with schools in both supporting those measures and then developing a policy. Do you have advice for parents on how to interact with schools and administrators on developing a policy that works for the school?
You want to speak?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, as I shared earlier, I think that the best case scenario is that the schools will draft a policy with the input of young people as well as parents, so that it's not just, you know, them imposing something and you get sort of everybody's concerns heard, and then you're taking everybody's needs into account. Because I think a lot of the concern around schools having phones or not having phones is like being able to reach their children in the event of an emergency. And so being able to, like, you know, talk about other methods to do that if the phones are not going to be available can really lower the anxiety level for some parents. But I think in general, there's a lot of conversations that should be happening with parents when it comes to media. I think there's a lot of people kind of think it's all or nothing with like a young person having technology or not. And there's a lot of in-between space that people don't take advantage of and kind of like gradually increase your access to social media or to technology. So there's a lot of dialogue that could happen around those solutions that I think people aren't always aware of. And so I think there's a lot because everyone's part of the problem, whether you have phones in your school or not. Like when problems arise, everyone's affected by them. So everyone needs to be part of the policies and the solutions.
You know, one other thing I would just add is, you know, as Vicki was referencing the Good for Media website, you know, the young people involved in Good for Media developed a guide for parents about how to talk with your children about their social media use that I would reference for you in terms of how to have conversations that won't cause your child to shut down, basically in terms of that dialogue. And one other related thing that I guess I just want to share is, you know, Vicki also highlighted in her presentation the headline from Australia, you know, and around ending social media use, you know, for people younger than 16. And so there's this dichotomy of creating these 170 headspace sites in Australia and then saying people under 16 can't use social media. And one of the things that was just interesting while that was happening was really the vast majority of mental health professionals across Australia, the people that developed the Headspace model, the people at all the centers really sort of fought against that law being enacted, and they lost the battle, really, because there was a sense that it was really too extreme a policy from the perspective of the people that were overseeing these agencies, the youth involved, and so I just wanted to share that piece too.
Thank you. And this connects with another question that I think I asked Gabriel to consider, which is the question was about how can therapists support parents to engage differently with youth around screen time. Do you have thoughts or reflections on how youth can work with parents to have a conversation about screen time and what that looks like? Do you have reflections on that?
Yeah, I think, again, just starting that conversation, people tend to really kind of stay away from those heartfelt conversations, kind of stay in the dark, but that leads to isolation and then more use of technology for good or for bad. Those conversations are needed to open up, let's say, plans to have more, how do I explain it, more, conscious internet use. And it just helps parents be more comfortable with talking with their children and just being more understanding rather than, I'm the parent, this is what you should be doing, more like what we've been talking about a lot, which is just kind of equal footing and just understanding.
Thank you. It reminds me of the conversation that we've been having at SafeRx around substances and drug use, and that if we don't have the conversation, if parents don't have that conversation with their children, then it becomes this sort of taboo topic. And so we, in collaboration with COE and in other organizations, we created booklets called Let's Talk or Let's Start Talking for the young youth. So we'd love to share those with you. Thank you, Gabriel. Yes, Leah.
I was going to say, and I think another thing, I think you touched on it, is just having, literally just have the conversation, but also treat your child as an equal. Don't treat them as you are less than me because you are a child. You should be like, you know what, I use my phone too a lot, and let's work on it together. Because whether you like it or not, parents, you guys use Facebook all the time, and Facebook is social media, and it is good and it is bad, and so I think we just need to be treated as equals.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Gabriel, the person who asked that question has a follow-up, and love your thoughts, and then any of the other youth. How do you encourage youth to seek supportive adult allies, and so that they can have true experiences of connection?
I feel like I've been saying this all again and again, but passion and trust. When people see people that are passionate about a problem, people get invested into it, people want to participate in it more. So when you see groups in your community, adult allies in your community, even just, people that might look like you, people that might have the same interest about you, just seeing, peers that are also just really passionate about it helps people build trust and notoriety, knowing that this resource, this organization has, the things I might want to use, and they're trusted. My friends might be using it. My peers are saying how good it is. It's just building a positive reputation and just, owning up with what you do, opening up those conversations, saying that we are here to help, we're here, kind of owning what you do, because I feel like a lot of these organizations kind of are here, but they're a bit silent. They don't have a voice, or that voice is kind of shunned, and just kind of ending that stigma and just being, we're here, this is what we provide, we're proud of it, and we want to help you.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Yes, Leah.
Sorry, I'm so sorry, guys. I have a lot to say. There is programs actually out there that help build relationships and learn how to make connections and relationships with adult allies. And there's one in particular, and the person who runs it is here. It's called Flight Club. Flight, not fight. And we made that mistake a while ago. It's basically a retreat, like a week-long retreat, right? It's like week-long. Weekend long. And youth come together and we learn about what we call anchors, which are just adult allies, basically, that just support us. And we have a web of anchors and like all these. It's super cool. And honestly, if you have children, what age is it? Sorry. 7th through 12th grade. You guys should sign your kids up because it is very fun. I did it last year as a freshman, and I loved it. And there's pamphlets, there's flyers, guys. There's flyers.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, I just had
Thank
to
you.
shout
That's
that out.
great.
Can I add something?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Anna Lilia.
Of course. You know, when being somebody who's been working with young people, I think young people, for all the reasons that you've all mentioned in the panel earlier today, have a really awesome ability to build those allyships with adults. I think what I've seen from what I've had conversations with our other youth advisory groups through the years was been challenging is parents accepting those adult allies in their young person's lives, you know, and youth being able to be very honest about saying, you know, that time of childhood, parent is who we went to, right? That your parent is the one that you went to have all these conversations with. Adolescence shifts that. Adolescence shifts that. Now you're going to your coaches because you're building different relationships. Now you're going to different clubs, different adult allies. And so I think one of the things that is really awesome about Alcove is that it also has those family supports. And, you know, when we first started Alcove, our youth were very like, no parents involved, none of the sessions, no kind of involvement. This is strictly confidential for young people. We had to introduce them to, one, the support services. We're more temporary, right? And so how do you really build those relationships with your parents? And we've had conversations with parents. It's like, how do you keep the door open without slamming it open, because that's what shuts it down. So I think that's the balance that as we're creating those adult allyships, also like working with parents to make sure, and working with our young people to walk their parents into their lives so that the door stays open, but at the same time, youth are free to build different adult networks of resources that will allow them to kind of thrive in different spaces.
Thank you. And just to follow up on Leia's, this is the flyer for the Flight, P-H-L-I-G-H-T, Flight Club. So thanks for mentioning that. Thank you. So the flyers are out, I believe, on the resource tables. But there's a hand raised. So Natalie, there's a question specifically for you, asking what is the role and importance of spiritual health?
I feel like that's such a broad question, but to me, I define spiritual health as like your purpose in life and things that fulfill you and, you know, help you to understand who you are as a person and to build a relationship with yourself that allows for a lot of mental stability and also comes down to like, you know, what you live for and like your own morals and everything. And I think I struggled with that for a really long time, especially growing up. There's one, and also people handle it differently, you know, like there's, you know, meditating, you know, going out in nature. A lot of people also, you know, there's also the topic of, you know, God and everything, having a relationship with God. And for me as a kid, I think I always tried to fit into this, like almost how society's like, I wouldn't call it limitations, but like for example, like the clash between the LGBTQ plus community and religion and everything. I went to Catholic school my entire life, and at some point, I definitely started to question my sexuality, and I turned away from the church because they didn't accept me for, you know, being gay and everything. But when I got older and everything, it all came down to my morals and what I believed in and, you know, equality and wanting peace for myself and wanting peace for others. So I think that spiritual health is really important in guiding what you want in your life and providing a structure and moving forward. But also, I think spiritual health is just being who you want to be and not living for, like, you know, what other people tell you and everything as well, if that makes any sense.
Beautiful. Thank you. So I'm going to ask Rochelle this question that I think is a little bit connected to what Natalie was just saying. Given the current changes in the culture of our federal government, how can we create positive change?
That's a really good question. What? Okay. I would say though, it does take a lot to create a change. I mean, it includes a lot of people to make an impactful change, especially in our government. So we need these voices to speak out. And I feel that in a way, especially with what's going on with the fear of deportation amongst many communities, I feel that workshops talking about resources that may help them out, especially with legal status and everything, it definitely helps. And I know a lot of people who express that fear. Sometimes they shun themselves and close their doors because they fear that they might get deported one day. And I'm hoping that this will change eventually. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to say that a lot of the questions that I'm asking are coming from our students who are here today. So thank you, all of you, for your really powerful and deep and thoughtful questions. Thank you. So I have a little pile here of alcove-related questions, so I think I'd love to do that. And so I'm going to read the sort of set of them, and then all of you can answer as you wish. So there's a question about when the alcove is opening in Watsonville, and a request to please consider partnering with the County Children's Behavioral Health. And there's a new facility opening in Live Oak, and the hope from the questioner is that you'll connect. I think you mentioned that in your presentation about the importance of collaborating with local entities that are doing similar work. So we would love to see that. They're wanting to know how it's funded and how long it's funded for. And then just a comment that's related that the Pajaro Valley Unified School District unfortunately is cutting mental health funds, which includes counselors and mental health clinicians. That breaks my heart to hear. And then as a follow-up, where are you all getting your funding? And maybe the district can benefit from those funds and not eliminate the support staff for students' mental health. And a big thank you. And then a question, can Alcove serve people younger than 12? So there you go. There's the Alcove packet. Go for it, team.
Where should we start?
Where do you start?
We'll fill in.
I will start. So we were able to go to Watsonville yesterday and see the space where the new center is going to be developed. And I think the hope is that they have a facility that is ready to begin construction in terms of developing the specific spaces for the services. And what do you think the hope was in terms of getting it open? Sometime this fall, potentially?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I think that's what they should.
Right, I think they wanted to try to get it open this fall. The funding for the Alcove centers right now that are open or are moving towards opening generally have come from applying for funds from the state of California. There were 2 different rounds of funding, one for the first 5 centers and then one for the next 6. The centers each received about $2 million to start their centers. And I think in talking with each of the centers, on the one hand, we were so excited to be able to, have the state provide that allocation. At the same time, in terms of what it meant in terms of capital outlay and redoing space and paying rent, it's not a lot of money to get things off the ground, to pull the teams together. And each Alcove Center, is really led by a lead agency that applied for those funds. and then really has brought together the community partners either before that application or since, in terms of bringing all the providers to the table. So in terms of child behavioral health for the county, it's going to be really important to connect with the folks at the trust to be able to ensure that that connection happens. And we're grateful to see some of the other partners here that are planning to be providers, at the Alcove Center as well. Our role has really been to provide to some degree, the vision for how the model looks initially, to partner with the state on the implementation, frankly, to advocate for the funding to be created. And, and right now the state pays for part of our team to provide the technical assistance to support the lead agencies and the community partners to be able to implement the services. So our role is to help get the youth advisory groups going, help the sites put together the clinical teams, help them think about sort of all the service components and how to develop them, help them look at the nature of the design, the facility development, sort of all of those pieces. So that's the role we've been, involved in and with our team providing that support. I don't know if I covered the age. So it's really been pretty set, 12 to 25. And, and internationally, that really is sort of the age spectrum for these programs. We're excited. Next week, we're going to be in Vancouver, or not next week, but the week after, for the International Association for Youth Mental Health meeting, which is an international network of people doing these programs from around the world. And but when you look at their sites everywhere, they all really begin at the age of 12. They're really trying to move from sort of a secondary school age on up, really sort of focusing on when adolescence begins and the period really where the brain is sort of fully developing up to the age of 25. And so you see pretty consistently internationally these models of integrated youth health really going to 24 or 25, but really starting at that sort of what would be the beginning of middle school kind of phase.
I can add a little bit as well. I think one of the things that our youth have mentioned, especially when it comes to behavioral, is health. It's having the autonomy to access services themselves. So here and in other countries, informed consent, right? Like at 12 years old, you're able to go in and say, hey, I would like to have some of these services. But that doesn't take away, and I was talking with our high school folks here about the need for youth mental health to be normalized to younger ages. So the youth advisory groups really lead a lot of conversations with, they'll do presentations in schools to start normalizing those conversations as young as kindergarten. So definitely feel the need, but with our young people really advocating for, if I want to get support, and one of the reasons why Alcove centers are not as the only, we're school linked, but we're not on school grounds. It's because of this ability to go and advocate for yourself and step in and say, I want to talk to somebody about what's going on with me. And then the hope is also to bring in the parent when that youth is ready, but that really adds to why the centers are 12 to 25.
Got it. And is your youth advisory group or board already formed, or are there openings for, if there are young people here that want to join?
So, great question, thank you. So for Watsonville, there's a current group that has been coming from the lead agencies that have formed the Watsonville, in a sense, community consortium. So Community Health Trust, United Way, they've pulled in young people from those organizations, but I know that there's gonna be an outreach application. So the hope is to get more young people from that area that are able to apply and then participate in the building of the Alcove Center. And again, criteria is youth commit to 1 year are able to stay for a second year, but we're constantly bringing in new youth to provide those voices to always answer that question of who's missing from this table.
Great.
And I know right now there's a heavy high school kind of connection that they have, so the goal is to include youth that are a little older, right? So your young professionals, if they've already graduated from school, or folks that went from 18 straight into working or vocational programs, community colleges, all that stuff.
Thank you.
You know, I realized the other thing I didn't speak to was the loss of funds for the school
Thank you.
school mental health teams, and you know, which is something we're seeing, unfortunately, sort of nationally. And you know, there was federal funding that supported additional school health and school mental health professionals that, you know, was really ended. And then, you know, at the same time, I think the state hoped that creating the school mental health fee schedule would make it more possible for school mental health providers to continue to maintain that support and potentially build it out for young people, whether they are, you know, uninsured or on Medi-Cal or have commercial coverage. I think the reimbursement rates, some of them are still coming out for the wellness coaches and things. But I think what we're starting to see is the need, you know, as these ALCO centers are springing up, to really then trying to really enhance those relationships with the schools, because there's a sense they might need to become, you know, more effective places for young people to go to, as these services might not be as available at the schools. And, you know, and I'll tell you internationally that for some of these centers, they also have then been able to develop the ability to have some of those providers spend time at the school sites to be able to also provide that support and outreach as well, to meet young people or after a crisis, to be able to go and provide support and then maybe help those young people continue those services at these integrated youth health centers.
Thank you. And there's a potential for a very short answer here, which is, do you receive any funding from social media?
You want to answer that?
Go ahead.
No.
I think
We don't. And frankly, you know, one of the things about it, and I don't know, Vic, if you want to speak to this, is, you know, if the offer ever came, we've sort of debated whether or not we should, right? And whether or not it feels a little bit like, you know, for us accepting funding from the pharmaceutical industry, you know, in some way. I mean, it really does, right? And so we haven't really, and none's been offered, though, I would say either, right? But
I mean, we have talked about this with our youth leaders for Good for Media, because we have grant funding, and it's running out. We haven't gotten renewed. So we are a group that is trying to advocate and make change. And so we have been invited in to do presentations to Meta and other social media companies. And we embrace that. Our youth were like, yes, I want to talk directly to these designers and tell them what I want to see differently. So we do see the need to engage everyone. And so it is something that we grapple with, right? Like, and they're not all equal either. Like, you know, leadership matters in the companies that are designing, and some are more open to youth safety than others. So it's a complicated question. It wasn't as quick as you wanted. So
that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. I appreciate it. And there's sort of two related follow-up questions to that. And I'm sorry to the person who wrote a very long preamble, but I think we get it. Wouldn't it be helpful to educate young people about the corporate and political interests that dictate the algorithms that we've been speaking about, so that they can be more critical when they use social media? And then there's a follow-up from one of our students. Are you comfortable placing the responsibility for managing healthy social media use on kids and not on the mega corporations? And I can't read that word, but basically controlling it. So related. Thank you.
Yeah. I think just like what we were talking about before, we talk about that a lot. And like when we were invited to speak with Meta, I double checked several times with the youth, and I was like, you don't have to do this. Like, you are basically giving them free advice to make money off of. So I think that it's really important to continue to incorporate that into media literacy, because that's a big part of media literacy, is like what you are engaging with, who's making money off of that, what is their goal? Is it your best interests or is it their best interests? And so that's part of media literacy. And I think that to the second question, no, it's everybody's responsibility to design these
Right.
platforms in a way that support youth mental health, and that currently is not the business model that we have, but I am a strong advocate for it, and that's why we're trying to get more youth voices to that table.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Andres, I'm going to ask this for you. This last decade has shown us young men are in crisis. School shootings, the red pill. What is being done? What can we do to support young men specifically? And is it enough?
I'm going to go back to what I started with in closing in the last segment, which is I think it starts with adult men setting the example. When I look back at my childhood, I was very fortunate enough to have positive examples that started within my family. And for a lot of people, that is not the case. That's where it comes down to having those role models available, readily available at the schools, in the school system. I was also very fortunate enough to have lots of positive role models in some of the teachers that I had. One that sticks out is my acting teacher, my theater acting teacher in high school. I think that's where it starts. As it relates to, mental health, I think that we really have to challenge the idea of what it means to be a man in society, the idea of what it means to be a father. And we have to work on ourselves as adults, because that's the only way. We have to be well in order to help others get well. We have to be that. When I started working in education, I realized very quickly that, wow, I actually have to walk the walk. I have to do what I'm asking my students to do. And it's not enough to just tell them what they need to do. They're not going to believe that. They're not going to trust you if you are not showing the example. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. And Leia helped me. Oops, did I lose it here? Oh, fell out of my. Can you hear me?
There's a switch. Did the switch go off?
Did the switch go? Sorry.
On where the antenna is, there's an on-off switch there. Do you want to use this one?
Yeah, maybe so. I broke it. I think I hear my. Do you hear me? I didn't break it. Thank you, speaker. No. No? Oh. Okay. Great. Here. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Where's my card? Leia helped me sort through the cards, and Leia said, "I want this one."
Yes.
Given the substantial impact of family violence on youth mental health and the lack of programs that address this issue, how can we increase our response in successful ways?
Okay, so I am a foster kid. I've been a foster kid for 3 years. The first 13 years of my life I spent in a violent family situation. And I think I agree, there's very little programs that can help. And I think we need to address the programs that we do have, like child protective services, and just give them more funding and treat the workers better. I can't tell you how many times my social worker has texted me saying, "I'm going on strike." And I said, "Okay, perfect. Just what I need." Same with therapists. I feel like our therapists in Santa Cruz County aren't treated the best. My therapist has texted me 4 times, being like, "I'm going on strike." So we do need to treat the programs we have. We need to treat them better. We need to treat the employees better. We need to give them more funding, whether that's state funding or federal funding. It needs to happen. And I know with our current presidential situation, it's probably not likely, but that's why we need to, go way back and go back to power to the people and start using our voices and start actually talking about these things and going to our senators, going to our Congress people, and going to even the president himself and just being like, "We need these things, give it to us." And yeah, I think that kind of answers that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So there's a question from one of our students making the comment that during COVID, many online learning programs that support mental health started. They are still happening, but how effective are these programs compared to in-person programs? So I don't know, this side of the table may have responses, but our youth may also have thoughts.
Oh,
Sure. One of the things that we do, so I run countywide student leadership groups that are open to any high school student in the county, whether you go to a comprehensive high school, an alternative ed site, or are homeschooled, or anything in between. Now, one of our challenges logistically is connecting students to do work that are in the same group, but who may live one in SLV and the other in Pajaro Valley, right? So what we found is that the hybrid model is kind of the best for that. It's best, so we have weekly meetings. So the only way to do that is via Zoom, right? But it is important. It's super, super important to make sure that you do set aside time and make it a priority to get the students in person. Because that's where they can really connect with each other one-on-one, and they can connect not just in a formalized setting, but in informal settings, in between learning segments, at lunch, where the space is available. The other key component to that is making sure that whether it's an online space or it's a physical space, that those spaces are safe, so that you're setting clear structures, you're setting clear boundaries and agreements, group agreements that are understood and agreed upon by everybody, and that even forming agreements goes through a democratic process, right? Setting some agreements that or you think are basic ones, then asking the youth, putting it to the group. Does anybody want to add something? Does anybody want to amend something? So once you have those parameters in place, I think you can build something where one can complement the other. And that's just at least from our experience.
Okay, so we're going to go a little bit more now into social media. Is there any research related to the difference between positive or negative effects of social media for those who have been identified as already experiencing mental health issues? Does that make sense? Makes sense to me. So is there any research looking at the positive or negative effects of social media for those who already have identified themselves as having mental health issues?
Yeah, I think some of what we referenced earlier, there has been some studies done, like the one I think it was Common Sense Media and Hope Lab, around young people experiencing depressive symptoms and how there were both negative harms, but also, still some positives. So there is some research on that. I think that there's a little bit of research when it comes to people who are engaging in self-harm or having disordered eating, and the way that they engage with social media and some of the problematic content that they come across, and how in the pursuit of support, if you're symptomatic, that can also just give you sort of an instruction manual on how to continue to self-harm. So I think it's very difficult to research, however,
Right.
because ethically it's difficult to have a control group in those sort of circumstances. So there's a little bit to answer the question.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of concern, and when we talk about the worries and the harms of social media, it's young people like that who are experiencing symptoms or at risk that we are most concerned about.
Thank you. So when we're thinking again, going back to talking with youth about their relationship to social media, and this is almost like a summary question, like sort of a nugget for people to go home with, and it may be hard to answer this question, and I'd love to hear the youth's thought as well, but what are the questions we should be asking youth about their relationship to social media? And you shared us this conversation deck. Are there a few questions from that deck, for example, that you would really recommend that we ask our youth? And what would youth like to be asked? That would be the other part of the question.
I mean, I can start, and I would love to hear what you all have to say. Yeah, so these decks I mentioned earlier, they are available to order. We paid for these with our grant funding, so there's a few left that we can send out on our website, goodformedia.org. You know, we could just look at what they say. There's 48 of them, but, you know, I could just randomly pick one. How can we become better digital citizens? How did the COVID quarantine affect your screen time use? What's one small actionable step you can take to reevaluate your mental health and your relationship with social media? How do you know when your social media habits are unhealthy? I think some easy questions that I would distill down is just like, if you're engaging with a young person, like, what was the best thing that you saw on social media or on your phone today? And what was the worst thing? Or what surprised you today on your phone? Just like open-ended questions like that, non-judgmental, no shame for whatever they respond with. It's gonna really, you know, open up the conversation to what they're doing and what they enjoy about it, or what they are encountering that's frustrating and hard. And I would love to hear what you say.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Oh, what would you like to be asked about your social media use?
Great. I'd say personally, just kind of like interests of what, you know, I might like, or, you know, what my peers might like. People like talking about themselves and talking about what they enjoy. So just getting invested and kind of seeing what they enjoy to do, what they enjoy to watch, what they enjoy to write about online, what they enjoy to look online, just kind of the small things. It doesn't have to be a big question like, what was the best thing you saw? Just a little bit every single day, and just that little involvement kind of tells us that you are interested in like what we see. And even though it might be something like, I don't know, how to crack an egg or how to make eggs, it's just something that like you can maybe, I don't know, let's say you're watching how to cook a dish and your parents go up to you and they're like, oh, you know, would you like to make that? And you're like, absolutely. Then you made that into a learning experience or into a bonding experience. So just trying to take advantage of the small things is just really meaningful.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, so this is a biggie. Do you have any ideas?
wait.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Can you repeat the question
Rochelle,
one
go
more
for it.
time? Oh, can you repeat the question one more time?
Oh, just what would you like to be asked about your social media use?
Okay, so I'm mostly like very active in social media. I'm always looking through my feeds and everything, and sometimes I feel that there's like a lot of content in which affects you, especially gang violence or any sorts of things. I remember that when I was talking to my friend, like I was scrolling through social media and I saw gang violence as well as school fights and everything, and I'm like, oh wow, is this what you are seeing? Is this what's going on? And I would really appreciate if, you know, if this could be checked into it, or if there could be an ability to eliminate and erase these not safe content for you.
Thank you. Thank you. So the question that I'm going to dive into now is, where did it go? Basically, it disappeared. Oh. It was a question about any ideas about how to build supportive, protective structures regarding the AI revolution and social media. So artificial intelligence kind of is already here. Any thoughts on that? That's a big top question from one of our students. Natalie?
No?
No, go ahead.
No?
Okay.
Leah? No?
I hope you have the answer because it's a hard one. No, I mean, I think the thing that strikes me right now is, people are saying how like we should learn from how social media just like grew so fast. It grew fast and broke things, which is the motto of Silicon Valley, right? And now it's sort of hard to contain or to kind of pull back. And so there are people that are trying to take the lessons learned and do it differently with AI. And so, taking those safety by design principles, coming up with protective guidelines for how to build. But those are very, very soft voices. I think if you look at the reality, we live in a capitalist society, and there's a race to be first, to, lead in AI. So I think that drowns out these voices, which is hard. But I think there are people trying to take lessons learned, and I think that would be my recommendation, is that we learn from our past mistakes and do it differently.
Probably an unpopular opinion in my generation. I hate AI. I think it takes away people's jobs. I think it takes away people's voices. It causes a lot of drama, because you can make AI about anything. Anything. Someone made AI, and the AI got this is actually a really sad story. This kid went on AI to find a friend, and was using AI as like a chat, like, oh, my friend, and then built a romantic relationship with the AI, and then wound up committing suicide because of it. And I just think, like, the people who program AI are the ones who we should be kind of like going after, and the people who fund AI, I think, are the real villains here, because I think, like, how can you let something that's supposed to be kind of fun and games, like ChatGPT, ask it a question, it answers it for you, you're making it go that far, and that's so bad. I think it's so bad. I think we should get rid of AI, but I don't know if everyone agrees with that.
Good luck. Thank you. Any other comments on that? Yeah?
I do agree that AI is, rather a good asset to, education, or if you want to learn more things. I feel like AI is morally in a gray area where it can help but perpetuate people. So it does depend on how the person is utilizing it. Because, for example, if a student has a question about like a certain assignment, as in like, oh, what should I do for this and this, or what equation should I use for this and that? However, I feel that people do take the advantage of AI and utilize it as a way to take the easy way out, or trying to cheat through the system through education and everything. And those are some of my concerns that I have for future generations. And I hope that there's like a system that will prevent that will prevent people from utilizing it in wrongful ways and trying to use it as a resource. And yeah.
Thank you. So, unfortunately, we have 5 minutes left, and I have like 2 or 3 topics that we haven't touched on. And Andres, I apologize for the bigness of the question, and that you're going to have to answer it in a short manner.
Okay.
So, apologies in advance. What is being done to affect the impact of anti-Semitism on youth? It's a biggie.
That's a big one. And I don't know that I can maybe answer it to the questioner's satisfaction, but all I can say is, one of the reasons that we open up our leadership groups to students across the county is because we have such diverse communities within our counties, right? From the mountains to the valley to the west side of Santa Cruz. When you get students from different backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, what have you, in a room, and they start to work together, they start to understand each other. Of course, this has to be done in a safe space. I'll underscore that again, with lots of structure. But when you do that, when people start to see what they have in common, the commonalities that they share, the experience that they're sharing by working on a project, right? Especially something that they're working on over the course of weeks, months, right? Or the whole school year. They start to understand each other, and the animosity kind of goes away a little bit, right? Everything that we do is equity-centered. It's focused on safety, making sure that everybody's safe, and making sure that everybody is heard. I think teaching students how to have disagreements is something that's very, very important, and that is crucial for their development into their adult lives. Because if they don't know, when they don't know how to disagree, that's when conflicts explode. As opposed to having a disagreement, knowing how to navigate it, then when they take on leadership roles, they know how to better work the systems of government with integrity. So that's, I don't know if that
No, it's
answers
a beautiful
that, but-
response, and I wish our current leaders, didn't resort to bullying when speaking with each other. You're also reminding me that of the restorative justice work that's happening both in the schools and in our community at large. So a huge thank you to all the work of COE that you've been doing to elevate, working like how to have a disagreement. Thank you, thank you. So we have several more questions. The whole area, I apologize for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and the correlation between social media. I got to ask Steve and Vicki before, and so there's not a lot of data on that yet. I imagine that if there's a way to study it, we will see a correlation because we're all losing our attention span. I'll speak for myself. But I just want to thank everyone. We're at the top of the hour, so we do need to stop. But I'm going to read this comment, so thank you to the person who wrote it, and I'll leave out the swear word. In case I don't get to tell each of the youth panelists in person, you are all amazing. Your voice matters, and I'm honored you spent your day guiding us. You are brave and speak so beautifully. Keep sharing. Keep speaking, and if adults don't listen, be louder or take over and do it your way. Pave your own path. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.